Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society.
Oh, joy!
Let's rock.
It makes me wanna fart!
Dear Journal, it's me, Doug.
You have it!
Baby's gotta do what a baby's gotta do.
That was a hoot!
On your mark. Get set.
Oh, here it goes!
Welcome back, all you slimesters, to Splat Attack, where we're taking it back to the slime-filled past. I'm one of your hosts, Brett Wilson.
I am your other host, Alex Nance, and Brett, I see somebody else here.
Yes, who is with us today? We actually have a special guest. Would you like to reveal yourself?
Would our secret guest reveal themselves, please?
So my name is Jasmin, Jazz for short, and I am a die-hard What Would You Do fan.
Yes, because in case you guys didn't know, we will be talking What Would You Do today for the What Would You Do 30th anniversary.
What would you do? What would you do?
Wow, we're just knocking them all down this time of year, huh? With, first we did the Nicktoons anniversary of Doug, Rugrats, and Ren and Stimpy. Now we got this, and then we got like Hey Arnold in October for its 25th, and then Are You Afraid of the Dark at the end of October. So it's like, man, we're just banging all these out this year. It's great. 91. What a magical year for Nickelodeon magic.
91 and 92. Some good years.
So yeah, let's get right into it. I guess I'll ask you guys, what do you remember most about What Would You Do?
Well, I know the memories I had with What Would You Do were incredible. It's one of it was actually the very first game show that I ever watched that made me fall in love with the classic Nickelodeon game shows in the first place. And that show itself, just like the joy that it brought to me, because growing up, I was a victim of abuse all my life. So that show has helped me in so many ways. It still does today. The pies, the action, the interaction with the audience. I just absolutely loved it.
Yeah, that's very heartwarming to hear. I really feel like that What Would You Do is a unique type of show on Nickelodeon, because while it is considered a game show in quotes, it's kind of more of a variety show in a sense, where it takes elements of like Candid Camera and even a little bit of Double Dare, as I've noticed, and just kind of mashes them all together with like a pie theme for everything. Like every single kind of activity they do, it's all, pie this or pie that, or, just trying to get the audience to do wacky, silly things that they wouldn't normally do. Hence, What Would You Do?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was very much an opportunity to be at Nickelodeon Studios, because it was filmed there, and you could tell, because it was filmed in studio and outside of the studio. And since it cost so much to go to Universal Studios and take the trip out there, we were able to live vicariously through the audience. And that was really, really cool to be able to experience.
Yeah, whether you're at home or actually in the studio audience, it was a good time for everyone. What anything else that really comes to mind for you guys before I rattle off some tidbits?
I remember watching the show as a kid, and I would usually have one of two things happen. Either Nickelodeon was one of those networks that was on all the time, whether it be just to actually sit down and actively watch, or just have background noise while I was doing playing with toys. And What Would You Do was one of those shows that either had my full attention, or for some reason I was just building with Legos. And it was
sound just like me.
and it would be I'd be half watching and half building the blocks at the same time. But I remember a lot of the toys that a lot of the little builds that I made while I was watching the show. I remember watching Double Dare with my brother. As I said in the previous episode, my brother's 8 years older than I am. And that was one of the shows that he and I really bonded over. And when What Would You Do came out, I got really excited, and it felt like a show for me because my brother didn't really get into that one by that point. And I loved especially watching the banter between Marc and Robin when the two of them would start messing with each other, particularly
that's
Robin
often the best part.
and those were awesome. And I also really loved not only to see the audience participation, but I loved whenever they would bring in various celebrities into the show as well. Which we'll get into later. But I always thought those were really cool because there were ones that I recognized and then ones that I had never heard of before, but I really enjoyed watching.
Yeah, definitely. We'll mention a few of those later. But I just think it had a lot of high energy to it, even though it wasn't quite as messy as Double Dare. And it really was like all about the interaction and getting people involved from the audience, getting the guests involved from Universal Studios or celebrities. It just felt like everyone was a part of this thing together, no matter where you were, even if you're a viewer at home watching on TV. And that's what really made it a unique, special show on Nickelodeon, because no other show really functioned like that.
Mm-hmm. You see, growing up when I was dealing with being a victim of abuse, I was always looking for something it helped me escape the pain. So I remember, and I didn't have a lot of activities back in the day to do. So the only thing that helped me was the TV, but I was never into like cartoons. I just wanted to find a show that would help me escape. So I remember the first time I ever watched What Would You Do? And I was like, what is this? I was like, let me just give this a try. And the first thing I remember was just seeing someone take a pie to the face. Yeah. And I instantly started laughing. I'm like, oh my goodness, let me just continue watching more. And the more I watched, the more of a fan I became. And then all of a sudden, that's every day after school, that's all I wanted to do was, what would you do? What would you do? And I remember just falling in love with everything about it, falling in love with Marc Summers, Robin. And then that led to become even I became basically obsessed with the show. Then I started falling in love with Double Dare and then more and more game shows, but it all revolved around What Would You Do?
That's beautiful.
What would you do? Kind of piggybacking off of what you had just said. I did an Instagram live a few weeks ago where I was just talking with the followers, and the question had been brought up why I didn't like the idea of me getting slimed or pied in the face or something like that. Because for me, growing up, I was bullied in school by.
I think all three of us can relate to that.
During the movie A Christmas Story, and the kid who got his tongue stuck to the pole, I was that kid. And every single time we watch that movie, everyone is, even watching the movie, people are laughing, and I feel bad for the kid because I was like, I was the one peer pressured into that. And
they don't know what it feels like to have their tongue stuck to that pole. It hurts.
Yeah. So watching shows like You Can't Do That on Television, where the kids would get slimed or water just dumped on unwittingly. Now as an adult, I understand they were paid for it, they were aware of it, all that kind of
the context around it.
Yeah. As a kid, you don't know that. And just to see these kids unwittingly have that happen to them, I felt bad. And to me, it was like being slimed or pied in the face or any of that stuff was being ridiculed.
Almost like the audience was laughing at their expense.
Yes.
Yeah.
And What Would You Do changed that for me. And it really started because at first, the first few times I watched it, because I couldn't stop watching it. It was this train wreck of silliness, and I absolutely loved it. But watching these people get pied in the face, and there's so much pie in the show,
so much. They must have blew at least 90% of their budget on pie and whipped cream.
Yes, but watching these people wanting to be pied in the face and wanting to get slimed, because usually they play some kind of a competition and the loser would get pied in the face or sent to the pie pod or something like that. But every once in a while he would give the people the opportunity to either have something potentially good happen, like go to the wall of stuff where you could win a prize, or just go to the pie pod. And there were quite a few people who just wanted to go to the pie pod, and that blew my mind as a kid.
Right.
And then to see them more and more enjoying, like they get pied in the face and then they have this gleeful laughter, and that really shook me as a kid.
It's almost like a rite of passage for kids who grew up with early 90s Nickelodeon, where, you know, Nick is kids, that was their slogan back then, and it was all about hanging out at Universal Studios because it was brand new back then. I think it opened either that year or the year before, and you know, it was all about the messiness and the fun and the interactivity. So that's why, you know, whenever they had the opportunity to, you know, get slimed or covered in pies, it was more like, okay, now you have bragging rights at school because you got to be on TV. You got to be, you know, with Marc Summers, you got to be covered in all this pie and no one else got to. So I can understand their eagerness for wanting to go to, you know, the various pie contraptions in the show. But before we move on to like other stuff we're going to talk about, I just want to throw in a quick few tidbits for all you listeners at home who may not be too aware of the show. This show aired on August 31st, 1991, and it went off the air, well, technically ended November 26th, 1993, and ran for 2 seasons, 90 episodes, hosted by Marc, and occasionally Robin would act as his on-camera stagehand. But an interesting thing is that in season 2, there were some pay disputes going on behind the scenes with Robin and the producers, which I believe was Woody Fraser / Reeves Entertainment. So she ended up focusing more on doing Double Dare stuff at the time for Family Double Dare. And then in her place, they either got like a co-host of the day, which they picked randomly from the audience, you know, to like wear the What Would You Do shirt and then do the things like pick the lottery balls for the wall of stuff, or just like help Marc out when he was doing sketches. Or, you know, I think they had like a helper chimp. I forgot his name, but he would like wear the shirt too and just be there for like comic relief.
Chimpanzee. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So they always found ways to make it work, even if, you know, things didn't work as planned.
Yeah, Jasmin is going to be our resident expert this episode because she's such an avid fan of the series that as soon as we were going to do this, we said we got to get Jasmin. So she's keeping us on track that if we misquote anything or have any information wrong, I know Jasmin's going to be like, actually, it wasn't a monkey, it was a chimpanzee.
Well, like I said, it's a great honor to be with you guys here, because once you guys invited me over, I'm like, oh heck yeah, that's what would you do?
Yeah, we'll have to have you back for Double Dare if we do an episode.
Yes.
I mean, there's so much material to work with there. You got regular Double Dare, you got Super Sloppy, you got Family, you got 2000, the reboot.
To me, Double Dare. To me, it's Double Dare. Any type of Double Dare, I'm up for that.
You can't talk about What Would You Do and leave out the different pie contraptions.
Okay, I mean, I got a list here, so I'll rattle them off. So, you know, in no particular order, this is what kind of pie contraptions, in addition to just people hitting each other with pies, that appeared on the show. We have the Pie Pod, which is like one of the most iconic of the bunch, of course.
Yep.
So for those of you who don't know what the Pie Pod is, it's pretty much you sit in a seat and it's 4 or later in season 2, 5 catapults that throw pie in your face.
Yep.
And don't forget the crowning glory.
Yes.
Yeah, which was like pink slime / quote unquote pie filling to help go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually when people went to Pie Pod and Marc asked the audience, like, how many pies do we want? 1, 2, 3, or 4? They would always say 4.
Audience, I think I know how many it is, isn't it? 4. Okay, let's let them fire. 1, 2, 3, and here we go. There's number 1. Okay, there's 2. There we go. Yes, we got the 2 of those. Thank you so much.
Gotta get the maximum amount of.
Always 5.
Yep. Gotta get the maximum out when you can. So of course,
know why they asked.
Yeah, why do 1? Why show up if it's just going to be 1 pie in the face? You got to get them as messy as possible. We have the Pie Wash, which appeared in season 2, and they would that one's interesting because it would sit next to the Pie Pod. And it was like this green background with bubbles on it and some plexiglass, and a kid or whoever ended up going to the Pie Wash would sit in this rotating leather like reclining chair, get sprayed with like three cannons of like really thin, really thin whipped cream, as if they're getting a wash. And then there's this like pie attendant in a red jumpsuit who like they would like,
you know how you go to the car wash and you get these pieces that spin to wash off your car.
Yeah.
It was that except for your face.
Yeah, one of those things. I don't know the name, but yeah, they would like clean them off on the face so that they could actually see after that. It was pretty fun. It's not my favorite, but I still enjoyed it nonetheless.
Less clean, more smear the goggles.
Pretty much. And it's funny that it like has that effect, because I do remember watching one episode where like nothing really came out, and then all of a sudden after the guy did his whole squeegee routine, Marc came closer to the kid to see like how did she like it, even though she clearly wasn't filled with any whipped cream on her, and one of the backed up tubes just started splurting it on everybody. So even when they like plan and prepare for this stuff, you never know what's going to happen on the show. So yeah, that's the pie wash. And
we also had
the pie coaster, which appeared in season 2 as well.
Yeah,
that one was really interesting, because they basically had this maybe 500 feet, if that, of steel roller coaster track, and they had this like big red race car cart that was on it, and then whoever was in it had like a helmet on, and they would go through like two bumps, so like start at the top and then go down over one hump, then a second hump, and then go through a massive pie at the end, and then it would like rock back and forth through it, so the person in the car would get like multiple smatterings of it in their face. And usually on the way down they had like these flags that said, what would you do on it? So the audience would usually say together, what would you do? And then splat.
But it was funny because I love the concept that the pie coaster had like this huge pie in the center, but there were times I didn't like it, because I understand with the helmet protecting their head and everything, but most of the time
it wasn't very messy.
But that's what I was, yeah, exactly. So most of the time it would just get the helmet, but not really the face, because you have all the gear covering for protection. And I'm just like,
or they would, or the velocity from what they were going, and their body would move in a way that as soon as they go down that second hill, their head's looking down.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So actually seeing them making contact with that giant pie was satisfying, but in terms of sloppiness, I would argue that it's one of the least sloppiest of all the pie contraptions that they had on the show, and which is unfortunate, but at least they look cool.
And the one, probably the simplest one, but the most messy.
Oh yeah. You know what it is? Pie slide. And the great thing about that is that sometimes they would give the people who go down the slide a pie can to hold on.
Yeah, the pie can.
And it's like, they have it facing towards themselves or towards the pie when they go down. And then we'd see an instant replay from their perspective, them just, careening down that blue slide and, just being covered head to toe in all that stuff.
And of course we had to ride it face first.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way to go. That way you can eat some of it on your way out. Don't even worry about lunch at Universal Studios. Just go down the pie slide and you're good for a meal.
Speaking about, the 4 contractions that they had with all the pies, there was actually 2 more contractions that
I was just thinking the same thing.
Before we get there, I do have to add 2 things about the pie slide, because they're pretty exciting.
Right,
one is in regards to like how much pie and whipped cream stuff that they use during the course of an episode. I read online that it took 9 hours to fill that pie slide, and it was like hundreds of gallons. I was going to say 20, but that's way too small for like a 10-foot radius dish. That thing is massive. It took a long time, and I can imagine why they only used it during select times, because there's a reason why it's so messy. It just was the highest density of pie matter possible on the show.
Oh man, that's a lot.
In addition to participants going down the pie slide, oftentimes, well, at least one off the top of my head, Marc Summers himself go down the pie slide. And there's this one episode, he was just covered head to toe in it. I don't know how he was able to do that, but when he got out, he looked like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was melting in July. He was just walking around with all this dripping pie matter on him, and he was trying to do the rest of the show like that, and everyone's like, ew, don't touch me.
With that infectious Marc Summers cackle.
Now, how am I supposed to do the rest of the show like this?
I have a suspicion, Jasmin, that you and I are thinking the same too. So before we get to those 2, It is worth mentioning the wall of stuff.
Yes.
Oh, that was my favorite. That was actually one of my favorites because the fact that you had the option, you were given a token by you. But it's funny because the ways I remember that the tokens were earned were you have participants from the audience that would play like a little mini game or something, and if you won, you were given the option to get the token for the wall of stuff or send the loser to the pie pod or the pie wash, from what I remember from the top of my head. And at the same time, now when you did go to the wall of stuff, you had how many doors, if I remember? 20, I think. Yeah, 20. Yep. So of course, pick a number, whatever is behind the door is your prize. You either get t-shirts, bags, from what I remember, hats, but then you had little surprises from time to time. You even had your little surprises.
Yep. If I remember correctly, they also did cards that would often send the participants to like the pie wash, pie coaster, pie pod, and all that. Or, they just skip the card and throw it right in their face, or even douse them with a whipped cream cannon, which is the best thing ever to see because you don't even see it coming. It's like open the doors, straight in the face. Sometimes they'd even get it on the camera. It was just glory, pure glory. Witnessing that spontaneity.
And I love the fact that when the note cards actually were to send you to the pie pot or the pie wash, the way they were written were like in a little poem. Some of those poems I even remember from the top of my head.
Do you remember any of them, Alex? Maybe you want to pull one up for us?
I can't think of one, but we'll just add a sound clip right here.
Roses are red, violets are blue. A trip to the pie pod is waiting for you. Come on over here.
Roses are red, envy is green. After the pie wash, you'll be squeaky clean. You're going to the pie wash, right over there. You have a one-track mind, and so will you on a trip down the pie coaster on What Would You Do? You're going to the pie coaster over there.
Kind of cheesy, but it got the job done.
So, Jasmin, what was one of the other two pie contraptions?
The one I remember was, I believe it was called the pie roulette, which was I remember. And then the pie pendulum.
Yes. Okay, so the pie roulette had made its premiere in Wild and Crazy Kids.
Yeah.
And then made its way over onto What Would You Do? And for anybody who doesn't know what the pie roulette is, it's essentially, that game that's the pie face game.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's that.
Except What Would You did it first?
Yes, you sit your chin on this desk, and somebody, or possibly the player, would roll a die, and you would turn the dial the amount that the dice had, and at any given moment, that pie would come flying in your face. So they would usually pick two people. So after the few turns, if it didn't flip and hit you in the face, then the other player would have to put their chin on the desk. But it goes until someone's straight up hit in the face with a pie.
Yeah, also very satisfying, even if it isn't messy. It's just like, okay, when is it going to flip up? Was it going to flip up?
I was going to say real quick about a little comment about the pie roulette. Also, sometimes they have what they call the flinch bucket. If by any chance you were to flinch, they'll pull the bucket down, and it had like this big gap, like pink or orange, whatever.
It's the same pink slime from the Crowning Glory, actually.
Yes.
Yep, the flinch bucket.
Good stuff.
The pie pendulum, instead of having your chin sitting on a desk, you were on this essentially a table that could be lowered by a crank.
It looked like a medieval torture device.
It did.
Yeah.
Usually how that worked is someone would be strapped in face first, lying belly down on it. Yep. And, you'd have another person, like a family member related to them, crank it X amount of times based on whatever Marc said. And they had to get 3 questions right based on truths based on their family members. So what's little Cindy's favorite food? And she'd say like mac and cheese with syrup on it. I don't know. And if they didn't get it right, it'd be like, crank it down 3 times, 1, 2, 3. And, that would determine how close they would get before they either safe or just dip their head straight into it.
Yeah.
So that was a fun one. Not quite as messy, but still enjoyable for the gimmick.
That also ended up being on Family Challenge game show.
Yes.
And that makes sense because the people who worked for Reeves Entertainment worked on that show later on.
I told you about Family Challenge because I was a diehard fan of that show too.
That
So
would
if
make
those
sense.
of you out there listening and you like What Would You Do, which you can find half of the series on YouTube at the given moment, you can find episodes of Family Challenge, and
I
there
loved
is
it.
the Pie Pendulum on several of those.
Yep, it's also on Daily Motion
I
too.
loved it. I love that show so much.
So
real.
one of the other two contraptions, at least the one that I can think of,
Yeah,
is the Pie in the Sky.
Yep, that's the one. Yep.
It's the same concept that Brett was talking about, where there would be essentially these booths that a mom and a dad would step into, and he would do the same thing, where he would ask questions about the child to mom and dad, and above them were 3 different tiers. And whenever one of the family members got the question wrong, then they would lower the 3rd tier, and it would the pie goop would drop down to the 2nd tier, and it would keep dropping for each incorrect answer until it just flat out dumped on the parent who did not know their child at all.
Very, very similar concept to the Pie Pendulum, except different way of distributing the pink slime. Yes. I actually watched an episode recently where it malfunctioned. It only dropped one level and then it went straight through.
And then everything
and got
came
the guy.
down. Yep.
And then the mom, when she had it done to her, she got out of the way and it just splat behind her. So she got off safe. But I think she got a pie or got sent to the pie pod for that, because no one's going away scot-free on this show. No way.
No, if you ever avoid pie in the presence of,
you'll just get more of it.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
You are absolutely getting punished with a whole lot more pie.
He is the Pie Punisher. I just imagine him as like a Marvel superhero with like a pie emblem on his chest, and he's like, "Who's ready for some pies?"
Oh man!
Yeah, because there was an episode where a dad avoided the kid went to throw a pie in the face. The dad ducked out of the way.
Got him in the audience.
Oh my goodness!
And Marc said, "No," and then gave the kid another pie. And he avoided again. He said, "Okay, you're going to the pie pod."
Because I saw something similar like that, which a father kept avoiding the pie, and I think he must have given the son 3 pies, and he kept ducking them. So instead of the pie pod, Marc Summers said, Marc Summers basically sent them to the pie wash where they strapped them in. He was like, "We're gonna strap you in, and you're not going anywhere this time." And he just completely got covered.
Brett, what was the other pie contraption?
Yes. Believe it or not, this was a very short-lived one, but it did appear in season 1 because Robin was driving it onto the stage. It is called the Pie Mobile. And basically what it is, it's a little red Power Wheels Jeep that you ride around. And the whole gimmick is, I guess you just get an adult in it. You ride across this alleyway and you're like a brick wall backdrop, and you have like a whole onslaught of kids literally throw pies at them.
Yep.
I don't even know how to describe that. It's messy. It's wild. I don't know. It's weird, but that's a thing. So yeah, I think those are all the contraptions that we covered through What Would You Do?
Trying to keep with at least get the rest of the pie stuff out of the way, because there's only a couple other things. I mean, they had all the pie contraptions, but they had the What Would You Do medley.
Right. Yes. How could we forget that? That was like at the end of every season 1 episode.
And that often led into the pie contraptions. So this is kind of our segue out of the pie stuff.
Very clever.
But most of the games they had involved pie, even though it wouldn't have the contraptions, but it would be the musical chairs, only it was musical pie or something like that.
Yeah, I like that one. And
which they eventually adapted into the Double Dare Live.
Yes.
You want to talk about that, Jasmin?
And I think Jasmin might have a little experience with that.
Yeah. So Musical Pies was one of my favorite segments on What Would You Do? So when they brought out the Double Dare Live tour in 2018, the 2019 season, I was lucky enough to attend the show 3 times. And my second time, I decided to wear a What Would You Do t-shirt to the show. And I had front row seat. Marc comes out, starts explaining how the show works. When he started explaining how in the second part of the show, they were going to play a musical pie, a little segment from the What Would You Do series, I went crazy. To make a long story short, when that part of the show came across, Robin points at me saying, "Sweetie, come on stage." So I ran up on that stage. Let me tell you, I had never spoken in front of an audience. I had never spoken into a mic. I was nervous. I had all these nerves coming in. And I just happened to be sitting on the first chair. So the moment Marc Summers walked on stage, he was the one that interviewed me first. So, your typical, what's your name? And he saw my shirt. He wanted to know more about where I had the shirt. The one thing I did not want was to be the first one out of the game. Fourth round comes, and all of a sudden the music stops and I'm holding the pie and I'm like, oh my God. But it's funny because that's also a game that if you are to cheat or they think you pie yourself very weakly, you would have to pay the consequence. So I remember the pie, just the music stops and I'm holding the pie. But the moment the music had stopped, the girl sitting next to me just happened to take the pie away from me. So according to Robin thought I cheated. Robin thought I avoided the pie. And I'm like, no. I didn't cheat. No. But then all of a sudden she's asking Marc Summers. She's like, did Jasmin throw the pie at the girl? And Marc agreed. I'm like, oh my God.
Agreed that you cheated?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So through their eyes, I try to avoid the pie. So Robin takes an entire can of Ready Whip and just puts extra cream on my pie. And I'm like, oh my God.
I just think they wanted an excuse to pie somebody.
And Marc hands the pie over to me. And then before I could even pie myself in the face, he asks me if I wanted to do it myself or have him do it. And I really wanted him to do it, but I was nervous. But I just said, I'll do it myself. I pied myself as hard as I can. They're trying to clean it off. And all of a sudden I hear Marc call my name. And I just happened to turn around to look at him, and he just takes a pie and just smashes it in my face.
Oh my goodness, double whammy. Wow.
And oh my God, all I remember was the laughter, and I was laughing myself because I was not expecting that. And then I'm just walking off the stage with pie all over my face, and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy.
And you had shared this on your Instagram before, yes?
Yes, I have seen the video.
Yes, it's saved. It's saved in the stories, because I post them as stories. I have posted them as a story post, but they're saved, so people could go in my profile and just.
So they're probably in the video section.
Yeah.
So
cool.
So games like that they've had where pie is involved, and the What Would You Do medley would often lead to the pie pod and things like that. But for those who don't know what the rest of the game consisted of, they'd pick probably 4 members out of the audience and they'd sit down on a stool, and then they would have a card put on their forehead so they couldn't see what was written on the card, and it would say something like eat grasshoppers or pet a snake. I think there was one time when they told Marc, because Marc would have one as well, he had to kiss a camel.
Yeah, I remember seeing that one. He was so squeamish, and the camel gave him a quick little peck, and he's like, oh, that's disgusting. It didn't even spit all over him.
And the contestants were given a choice of, you can do what's on the card, but you have to do what's on the card, or you can just go to the pie pod. Knowing how terrified I was at that point of getting a pie in the face, I'd rather pet a snake. So I would have always, if I was in that situation, I'll do the card, whatever it is, I'll do the card.
Right. It's worth mentioning that some of those were pretty gross too. I did recall some food ones that they did, you had to gobble a bunch of food and then spit it out as if you were a volcano erupting, or drink a Limburger cheese milkshake, which is pretty disgusting.
Yes.
There's one where a guy had to walk on a bunch of eggs, and he got underneath, and someone had to hold worms or step on worms. So there's a pretty wide variety of stuff. I always tuned in for the medley for the hidden talent, because I was always curious what kids and parents would come up with.
I remember I saw this one particular lady. She was older. She was in her mid-40s, and she had chosen to go down the pie slide. And Marc was very surprised because of her age. Her card had said hidden talent. And then she had decided to do both. So she did her hidden talent. Then she was sent to Pie Slide. That was like the first time I remember actually seeing somebody do both instead of just instead of just choosing one or the other. She just wanted to do both.
It's a rare opportunity. I think she was maximizing her 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah. I remember this is going off a little bit with the what would you do melody. The other thing I remember, which was also a favorite not a lot of episodes had this particular segment, was the what would you do choice bag.
I do remember that. Wasn't that more prominent in season 2?
Yeah,
with the co-host.
Yeah, but the choice bag was also like one of my favorite things, is because it's basically all the like a card, a whole bunch of cards with inside the bag, and you have to do it A or B. Have to do exactly what the cards say. So they were like, the one I remember from the top of my head, which was my favorite, was pie yourself or pie your partner.
Classic.
And I remember they actually took the choice bag outside of Nickelodeon Studios, and they started walking all over Universal Studios asking people, would you pie yourself or would you pie your partner? Some people decided to do themselves. Some people wanted to do their partner. And that was just like my favorite segment of the choice bag.
Yeah, it's pretty cool that they had so much variety with all these different sketches that they did. Speaking of which, we can also segue into the Candid Camera stuff where they would go outside to Nickelodeon Studios and do things. Yeah. Marc shows a video that was previously recorded of people doing something, or they would actually bring like a special guest in and have a bunch of people from the audience go out with them and rehearse something. So I guess we can start with either one of those if you want to lead in with that, Alex.
Well, an example of one of the pre-recorded ones was Can You Dance Like MC Hammer?
Yes, I remember seeing that one with the parachute pants.
Yep.
And another example was they had these kids who were told that they were going to be featured on this kids cooking show. And and this lady had made a cake, but it was disgusting.
It was really sour, the kids described it as.
And as she left, the kids were left alone with the pie and they had to eat it. And it was gross, and just watching their reactions. So there was no game involved. It was just see how they respond.
Right.
One other example was in the studio, Nickelodeon Studios, they would have two actors, nobody you would know, just two random people, a guy and a girl. And the girl was acting like she was angry at her boyfriend. And then she would start grabbing random
I remember
people.
that one.
Will you go over and tell that guy he's cheap? And then they would just use them as a pen pal, essentially.
And,
right.
And my favorite part of that segment is that there were times she would give like the girl of somebody a cup of water, go and splash it in his face, go and splash it in his face to see if they would do it.
Yeah, he was like, I didn't want to pay for a meal, so you should just tell her that she could pay for her own meals. And then the girl who got roped into this is like, come on, man, it's $5, just fork it over. Don't make a big deal out of it. I love seeing some of these genuine reactions. I think that's the best part of these pre-recorded Candid Camera type segments where you just get to see how they adapt.
The other segment that I saw like that the Candid Camera segment was there was a family that they went to a restaurant, but the restaurant was medieval times and they had no utensils or anything, and then they give them pasta to eat, and they were how are we supposed to eat this
with your hands? Of course.
They were just trying to figure out ways to eat it. And that's another part of what would you do that I remember from the top of my head.
Yeah, it's a great one. They had a lot of varieties. There was one where kids had to pretend they were doing an advertisement for a lipstick commercial and then kiss a stranger. There was one where there's a shoe salesman who brought kids some shoes, and then when he left, his hair would either be left behind like a toupee, or he would make some weird canned farting noises just to see how they react. That was pretty funny. But as inappropriate as this is going to sound, my favorite one of all those Candid Camera moments is Stan Cola. Do any of you remember the Stan Cola segment at all? And do you know why it's one of my favorites?
Why?
because other than the fact that many kids like drank the cola with a bunch of random cooking ingredients and spicy pickle and all this other stuff, other than just seeing their look of disgust on their face, there's this one high schooler kid who was playing it totally suave. As soon as he took a drink, he was like, try Stan's Cola, the new soft drink that brings joy to your taste buds. Then he takes a drink and he's like, and it tastes like beef. And it's the coolest beef. Stan's Cola is now available at Saddam Hussein's grocery. And I'm like, what? How did they allow that? That was like the first and only time they've ever censored someone for swearing on the show. And they put like a big fluorescent magenta X on his face when he said that on the screen. And I just lost it. I literally rolled off my bed laughing because I did not expect that.
Try Stan's Cola, a new soft drink that brings your joy to your taste buds. And it tastes like...
Just continue to read.
And it goes down like... And it's a cool... It's the right amount of sweetness and... Cue card. Stan's Cola is now available at Saddam Hussein's grocery.
You know, that kind of spontaneity is really what makes those segments.
To get off the Candid Camera stuff, but still doing live things, they would often have an event that would be taking place just outside of the studio. One time they had a ventriloquist who was out there, but it wasn't necessarily the ventriloquist, but it was
the
dummy.
I remember that. Chuck Wood was his name.
Yeah, and he'd be
Chuck Wood.
sitting at a table. He was sitting in a chair, but of course it was the guy underneath, and he would interact with people in line to go in the Nickelodeon Studios. They had a monster truck one time that was sitting.
Oh, that was one of my favorites.
Yeah, the monster truck. Yep.
They got people to drive that thing with a professional stunt driver, and even Marc Summers himself got in there, and they almost like flipped the thing over as they were going over 3 old junky cars. It was great. And then they did a fake out with a woman who went in there because Marc was like, "Oh, she must be a really brave person to do that." And it turns out she just ran over like
Hot Wheels.
Yeah, a bunch of little toy cars. And that was hilarious. I love how silly they get with these things.
Another one that I remember was there was a family who trained with like firefighters to like like come down like the wall.
Yeah,
like
with the trampoline. Was that a different one?
No, they rappelled down the wall.
Yeah.
They were on the on the roof of the building, and they would rappel down.
I remember that. Yeah.
But I do also remember the trampoline one, which it was they were doing like aerial stunts, like on the like the circus would do, like the aerial stunts.
Definitely.
The trapeze. There you go. The trapeze.
Yeah, they went to all sorts of lengths to make sure they got a ton of variety for the guests who would like help out with those special segments where they'd introduce themselves in front of the audience and then take a few members with them to kind of rehearse some sort of sketch and then come back and perform it for them. People off the top of my head that come to mind is the makeup artist who would like turn people into really old or really young or monsters. And then usually a mother or a parent had to guess which one of these 3 masked men is your kid. And then they'd have to guess based off of like grunts or how they move. There's one guy who was a stunt guy. I think his name was Brady something.
He came back a couple of times. I really liked those.
I really liked him too because he really got into it. He rehearsed a short skit where it's very loose plot and it's just, hey, don't pick on my girl. And then he would just like bash one of those stunt bottles over one of the parents' head and then like
breakaway bottles.
Throw them in like a easily collapsible table. And then Marc would even get to it too and just end up throwing the stuntman through like a window at the end of it or like off a ladder into a box of TNT. So, they really took it pretty far.
And then you also had the What Would You Do dancers that they would come out and they'll do some silly dance. Then they'll take people from the audience, go backstage and learn the dance so they could come later on and perform for the audience. Yep.
Yeah, like the guy with the tuxedo and the flippers where they had to do like some sort of tap dance and a bunch of puddles to singing in the rain. Yeah, that was fun.
I remember that as well.
And probably my favorite just because of the voice, because What Would You Do had a lot of special guests as well.
Yeah.
But occasionally this, like you were saying, the special guests would very much have the audience do some kind of activity that they would bring back at the end of the episode. But this one, I think, was the only time that they had a character, because up to this point, it was just backstage crew hands and things like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they had Dudley Do-Right.
Oh, right. Yeah, they had him, Nell, and Snidely Whiplash, and they all
Yep.
came in and did their little stunt. Yeah, that was fun.
There was a great cartoon done by Jay Ward many years ago, Rocky and Bullwinkle and Dudley Do-Right. Does anybody know what Dudley Do-Right did for a living? Does anybody raise your hand?
Do-Right at your service,
Hi there,
sir.
Dudley.
Acting corporal.
Acting corporal. I thought he was acting poorly, but anyway, you're an acting corporal, huh?
Yes, sir.
Very nice. Any reason that you're here?
I'm here to answer all your questions, sir.
All my questions. All right. Well,
I was gonna say that they also brought the voice of Olmec from Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Took the
'cause he
words
was-
right out of my mouth. I was
Yeah,
just gonna
because
say,
he too was on a few episodes. I remember.
2 years before Legend of the Hidden Temple got their start, he showed up and did some like voice impressions, and I think he did the "What Would You Do" medley as well, if I remember correctly. And he had that like typical more high-pitched voice impression that he would do whenever he was on Legends. So it was just fun to see him before he rose to fame for doing voice work for Legends and for Avatar: The Last Airbender and a bunch of other stuff that's on his IMDb. He literally has a wall of credits, hundreds of roles since then.
I mean, it makes sense. He is a talking wall, so
You can play talking walls and talking stone heads on my resume.
he is the wall of stuff.
I would like to see the Wall of Stuff have the Olmec voice and like pick a door, any door.
Oh man, a crossover. You hear
Right?
that, CW? Put that in the new Legends reboot. Surround Olmec with the wall of stuff.
Or if you want to do like a double crossover, you can do Carney from The Tale of the Laughing in the Dark from Are You Afraid of the Dark? And be like,
gosh.
pick the right door and you go free. Pick the wrong door and there he'll be. So if you end up pulling up one of the 20 doors on the wall stuff, maybe Zebo the Clown will pop out and smoke in your face or something. Now that would be a sight to see, because I'm wondering if like Marc would just jump out of his pants when he saw him.
instead of temple guards,
Yes,
it's what Are You Afraid of the
Zebo.
Dark monsters?
I would like to see an Are You Afraid of the Dark themed Legends of the Hidden Temple run, but you know.
Okay, somewhat.
That's a tangent.
Yeah, that is a tangent. Have you seen Secrets of the Crypt Keeper's Haunted House?
I have not.
Check that out, and then imagine that as Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Okay.
There are a few episodes on YouTube. But going along with guests on What Would You Do? Because obviously we would have the audience do stuff, but they also had a lot of special guests who would just do their shtick.
Right.
I think the only character guest they had, and I'm sure there's probably more, but the only one that comes to mind is Beetlejuice.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
I remember he was a guest. He was a guest.
Now, I haven't seen, because YouTube only has about half the episodes, unfortunately.
Right.
And I haven't seen the one that has Beetlejuice, but I remember him being on the show a
Me
couple
too.
of times.
I don't think it was Michael Keaton, though. I think it was just
No.
some actor that they had for a ride.
Yeah.
Because at the time, Universal Studios had the Beetlejuice Rockstar Review, where it was a rock concert. It would be Beetlejuice with the classic Universal monster movies.
Right.
So it'd be Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein and things like that.
Right.
Beetlejuice was a part of that. So they had him come to What Would You Do set and would just gross the audience out. He had like tiny little snakes in his pocket, put them in the kids' hands, and
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm the ghost with the most babes.
when they came to I haven't seen like the full episode on YouTube, but I seen like a clip with Beetlejuice on What Would You Do?
Yeah.
And I remember they took like the prettiest girl from the audience and they asked her, and Beetlejuice of course went up to her and said, "Would you marry me?" And Marc just put her on the spot. She just became so embarrassed and she was like, "No." She was just like, "No."
Oh, well,
That's
she probably
like
saw
the-
the movie, so she knew what would happen if she agreed. She'd have to go into the underworld.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
But
she was
that's
thinking
like
ahead.
that's like the only little clip I remember from What Would You Do with Beetlejuice included. It's when he asked her, like, the prettiest girl, "Would you marry me?" And she just starts laughing and she's like, "No, no." She's like, "No."
It's probably because he didn't bring a ring with him.
and they had the 90s in general had a lot of magic specials. I mean, there were magic specials all over the place in the 90s.
They did have a
Like,
few magicians on What Would You Do?
and there were quite a few magicians, which, I mean, it makes sense, especially since Marc Summers is a bit of a magician himself.
Yeah.
Right.
That man's jack of all trades.
Didn't he have his own magical mystery special?
He did.
Like
He
the
did
late
for a
80s?
Halloween special. there were a couple of magicians. There was one, I can't think of his name right now.
The Amazing Kreskin?
I don't know.
I know he did card tricks.
He had been on there twice.
Okay.
That I know of. And usually he would ride this.
Yeah, the piano bicycle. Yeah. Shoot. I wish I wrote his name down.
And while I was watching, because I had watched it not too terribly long ago, because I was watching it with my son, because I'm giving him a proper education on television, children's entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, I wonder whatever happened to these different magicians and performers that aren't huge names now.
The guy that you said, the one that comes in, you say on a like piano, right?
Yeah.
It's like a piano.
Yep.
I know. I forgot. Yeah, I forgot his name, but I know that he passed away a few years ago.
Yeah, and that was really tragic. I mean, anyone passing is tragic, but I was looking through, and I believe somebody broke into his house and injured him fatally, unfortunately, from what I read. I don't know how accurate, but that's just drawing from memory from what I had read fairly recently. But
rest in peace, Bicycle Piano Man. You'll be in the hearts of What Would You Do fans everywhere. Well, listeners at home, if you're watching What Would You Do episodes before or after listening to this episode, definitely comment on our Instagram page.
Oh, did you find it, Jasmine?
Yes. So give me a second. Okay. So
never mind.
His name was Professor Holcomb Jeeves.
Yes.
Yeah, that was his name, Professor Holcomb Jeeves. Mm-hmm.
With a name like that, he was a man of many talents.
Yeah.
And there were so many other guests, but usually they all had some kind of quirky characterization with them that were all really fun. All the guests were just fun. The show in general was a variety of stuff. There were all kinds of pies and messy contraptions, hidden talents, special guests, candid camera stuff. It was a hodgepodge of just silliness. And we as kids,
that's what made it wonderful.
Growing up, I remember Marc being sent to the Pie Pod a few times and Pie Slide, but there's a specific game that they were playing, and I forgot the name of it, but I remember Robin being pied in this certain game.
There was a game where she was like hanging from a harness in front of the brick wall backdrop, and it was like ready, aim, pie, and there was a bunch of people sitting underneath her.
That's the one.
And they had to somehow hit her. I think she had to drop a pie on someone first, and if she missed, then they underneath her would hit her with the pie.
She was reverse Space Invaders.
Yes.
Yep.
And I remember getting hit pretty dang hard.
Yeah, that was the one I was gonna mention, because growing up, like I would always see Marc getting pie, but I would never really see Robin like get hit at all.
It was once in a blue moon.
Until that one specific game, that was the first time I ever saw like people throwing pies at Robin, and I'm like, finally, that's what I was like, that's what I really wanted to see.
Now the What Would You Do experience is complete.
Yeah.
Just needed to put Harvey in there somewhere,
right? I actually wish he was the announcer for What Would You Do, because if you notice carefully, when they do announce things like introduce the Pie Pod or the Pie Slide for the first time, it's actually Marc doing his own introducing, and he's like, back to you, Marc, as if it's someone else. But we clearly know if you tune in carefully that it's also him.
I was reading the book Slimed, and I remember, I believe it was Robin, it may have been Marc, but I'm pretty sure it was Robin talking about the fact that Marc and Robin both didn't really care for doing What Would You Do, just because it seemed it's the whole show seemed superfluous to them. Why they would often call it, why are we doing this, instead of What Would You Do?
It did seem like a stripped down Double Dare with a little bit of Wild and Crazy Kids mixed in, so I can understand their less enthusiastic response.
Like I remember Marc saying that like I knew he wasn't that too much of he wasn't too fond with What Would You Do, but when I first heard him say that, I've actually like reached out to him. I'm like, listen, I understand you might have not been a fan of the show, but you have to understand that show means the world to me. And he was so understandable. He told me, listen, he was like, He was like, it's always an honor hearing fans that grew up loving What Would You Do. And then he told me he doesn't that it's so funny because he doesn't understand why some fans like Double Dare more than What Would You Do, or vice versa. What would you do more than Double Dare?
I think in retrospect, hearing things like your comments, and you're not the only one. I guarantee you he's heard tons of times when fans have come up to him and told him how much they loved either show. And I think in retrospect now that he's not in it, he at least is able to appreciate the fact that he did it just because of how much we, the fans, enjoyed it as kids.
Yeah, he can look back on the legacy that he's built and see like all the good that he's done. Whether, you know, when you're removed from the art, you kind of see the impact that's left on other people. So it's nice for him to just appreciate not the consequence, but like the ripple effect of him doing all these great shows and having it affect us and ingrain into our minds and bringing us such fond childhood memories. So, you know, in retrospect, that's like the gift that keeps on giving, so that the fans can like connect with him even long after it's been recorded.
Yes.
I agree.
That pretty much covers our retrospective 30th anniversary of What Would You Do? It was a really fun, unique variety show that really got the audience to participate in ways other game shows just couldn't. And as a result, we all had fond memories of it, and a whole lot of pie mixed in there too.
Oh yeah.
All right, Miss Jasmin, time for the socials. For anybody who wishes to follow you, where can they follow you at?
So it was, my Instagram page is JAS _ WWYD.PiePod on Instagram.
Very cool.
And Brett, how about you, my friend?
You can find me at Brett Wilson Art on Instagram. I do all sorts of 90s nostalgia art, especially Nickelodeon. So if any of you guys want some art prints, posters, stickers, or anything in between, I also do commissions. Feel free to hit me up through a DM or email.
Check him out. I love his art.
He has fantastic art. The dude is super talented.
I would love to do a What Would You Do or Double Dare themed art. So I might have to do some sort of illustration to celebrate the 30th anniversary. Yes. So if I do one and I post it at the end of August, keep an eye out for that.
And
Please, I want to buy one too.
Definitely.
Yes. And I am Alex Nance. You can find me at True 90s Nickelodeon on Instagram, and also a closed Facebook group under the same name. You can also find me on Twitter at True 90s Nick Fan. And Splat Attack, if you would like to follow Splat Attack, it is on pretty much all of the socials. So look for Splat Attack or Splat Attack 2021. It is on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, name it. It's Tumblr. I don't know if anybody's even going to use Tumblr, but there is one because our hub connects with all of them. So use it while we got it.
Yeah, you can pretty much find us and listen to us wherever possible. Just pick a podcast app of your choice and tune in. We love hearing from you guys. We love hearing about topics and your memories and all sorts of comments. So engage with us. We're here to relive the 90s with you in any way we can. And we look forward to taking this slime-filled journey with you.
So Slimesters, send us an email and tell us which show you preferred. What would you do or Double Dare? And if you had the chance to go to any of the Pie Contraptions, what would it be? You can send us an email over at splatattack2021@gmail.com. Let us know what you guys would want to do.
Cool.
So speaking of that, Jasmin, of the Pie Contraptions, which one would you choose?
Okay, there's two, and here's how I would do it. I would want to get sent to a pie pod. By any chance the pies don't hit me, I would beg Marc Summers to pie me in the face. And after being sent to the pie pod, I would want to get washed off on the pie wash. So yeah, that's how I would do it.
That's the way to do it.
Brett, would you do anything differently?
Yes, I would do the pie pod first. I obviously want to get all four plus the crowning glory because the messier the better. And I would top it off by going headfirst into the pie slide until I'm head to toe in pie gunk, just like Marc Summers.
And I would take a gamble and go at the wall of stuff.
Ooh, what door would you pick?
Yeah, that's a good
gosh,
question.
7, just because
Ooh,
James
lucky
Bond.
7.
So 7.
All right. So
now I'm going to
you
go
open
back
up
and watch what the 7 was when all the kids picked it.
Cool. Well, I think that'll do it for this episode. We'll see you Slimesters next time.
Yeah.
And here's Marc Summers to send us off.
We had a great time here on What Would You Do? We always do, though, and we'll see you real soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Reprise the theme song and roll the credits.
Hard to believe, folks, but it's time to say goodbye.
Nighty-night.
Hey, check us out next time for more adventure and another great legend of the Hidden Temple.
What will we do till then?
Chill for a couple. We'll be back. You're on, Nick.
And it was time for the superhero to move on.
I declare this meeting of the Midnight Society closed.
Bye-bye.
Lie down, hold the pie cam in front of you.
I'm gonna get Bob Barker on the phone. What'd you
Marc,
like this?
Okay, now,
Okay, now, is this the right
audience,
angle? Do I have this upside down? What?
Okay, it's not your show anymore, okay? Okay, 1, come on, audience, 2.